Obligated to read a fairly lengthy opening statement, so please bear with me. Good morning and welcome to the June 25th, 2020 Board of Assessors meeting. As Chair of the Board of Assessors, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the Governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing WebEx through the city's IT department for this electronic meeting. All members of the Board of Assessors have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen to this meeting through dialing the following number, 978-990-5298. Once again, that number is 978-990-5298, and using the password 273974. And once again, the password is 273974. The public may also view this meeting on Comcast Channel 16. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website at www.nashuanewhampshire.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall and the National Public Library. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or Channel 16, please call 603-821-2049. Once again, that number is 603-821-2049, and they will help you connect. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, the reason they are not able to attend the meeting in person, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So I'll now call the roll. Mr. Early.
This is Robert Early. I'm a member of the Board of Assessors. I'm following the governor's guideline and joining the meeting remotely. I'm at home and there is no one else with me.
Mr. Bergeron.
I'm Paul Bergeron, a member of the Board of Assessors, and following the governor's advisory to stay home, I'm joining the meeting remotely from my home and no one else is in the room with me.
And I'm Dan Hansberry, a member of the Board of Assessors, and I'm following the governor's advisory to stay home, joining the meeting electronically, and there is no one in the room with me. Today, we will be hearing various requests as listed on the agenda. Please note that decisions may be taken under advisement and involved parties will be notified at a later date. Per the City of Nashua bylaws, a minimum of 2 or more affirmative votes are required to approve any application. In addition, this board will hear any and all scheduled cases as long as quorums of 2 voting board members to contest the decision that this board makes. To appeal a municipality's decision on an abatement application, a taxpayer may appeal to either the Board of Tax and Land Appeals based on RSA 76:16-A or the Superior Court, but not to both. Please contact the assessing department for more information. Ms. Cameron, are there any changes to today's agenda?
There is one actually. Mr. Demers from St. Joseph's Hospital joining us for the board's request.
Whoa.
Trouble hearing you, Lynn.
Mr. Demers from St. Joseph's Hospital is joining us for the board request.
Thank you. She said Mr. Demers representing St. Joseph's Hospital is in attendance. Okay, does anyone have any questions before we begin? All right. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Assessors meeting for June 4th, 2020, accept them and place them on file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any errors or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, please signify by saying by a roll call vote. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, minutes are approved. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the minutes from the non-public session of the Board of Assessors meeting, which was held on June 4th, 2020, accept them and place them on file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Are there any errors or corrections? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. At this time, I will recognize Kimberly Kleiner, who is the Director of Administrative Services, who has a division update. Ms. Kleiner?
Good morning. So with the board's permission, I'll share my screen.
Go right ahead.
So this morning, we have 18 residential and a few commercial abatements being presented to you today by staff. Another 20 properties are being held for further review by our office. A list is attached to this memo for your information only. By New Hampshire statute, these abatements will be considered deemed denied as of July 1st. No action is required by the board at this point. We will continue to work with these property owners over the next few weeks. We have also had a number of religious, charitable, and educational exemptions to bring before the board this morning. Since there is a lot on your agenda, I'm going to be very brief this morning. Also attached to this memo is the current project status report on the full measure and list reval from Vision Government Solutions. We would like to thank June Perry for attending the June 4th Board of Assessors meeting and providing the board with an update on the project. For any members or residents that may be watching, of course, that meeting is available on YouTube. As noted in my memo to the board on June 4th, I was expecting to bring you an update on the hiring of a chief assessor. Regretfully, the city has had to repost the position and continue our search to fill this important position. Beginning July 6th, the city will begin a very thoughtful, phased-in approach to reoccupying City Hall and other admin buildings across the city that have been closed since March 18th. And you'll hear the mayor speak a lot about this over the next few weeks. Some buildings or departments will initially remain closed to the public. We're making a number of engineering modifications and administrative processes are being established to ensure the safety of our employees and, of course, the safety of the public. Assessing will open to the public by appointment only. Residents will be able to schedule an appointment by phone or email, and an administrative staff member or assessor will be available Monday through Friday during normal business hours. Assessing is scheduled for a new addition to our department. A customer service area will be built. This will occur sometime this summer. We'll notify the board and our residents at a later date if we expect any interruption to service caused by this construction. Our office, in cooperation with Vision Government Solutions, is currently preparing the city's status report due to the BTLA on the full measure and list by July 7th. We are very pleased to confirm that representatives from Patriot Properties will join the board at your meeting on Thursday, July 16th to present the board with an overview of our upgraded camera system. They're going to highlight the advantages of upgrading to version AP5 and some of the key differences between Classic, our old camera system version, and AP5. So that will be a very informative presentation And we look forward to having Patriot Properties join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I just got a technical difficulty here. I went to remove a pop-up and the screen disappeared.
And now I'm gonna try to stop sharing my screen, which. Sorry, this is generally not easier than this. Okay. There we are.
All right. Thank you very much, Director Keenan. At this time, I would recognize Deputy Corporate Counsel Celia Luther regarding the Board of Assessors proposed rules.
Yes, good morning. As is included in the packet.
Chair, everyone would mute phones except party that is speaking. To kind of that.
What do I hit?
Okay. Are we good? Not sure. It looks like there's call-in user 3 is not muted. Anyone hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, Celia. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Anyone else? Okay. Is that calling user 5? I don't know. Can we? Yeah, can we mute calling user 5?
That sounds bad now.
Yeah, okay. I don't know why we're not appearing in the body there, but anyway, okay. So Dan, can you hear me? Tim?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. So presented in your packet today is the result of some work by the board and myself looking at other rules and procedures of assessing departments and boards of assessors within the state and also other boards of the city. It's meant to refresh and update the current bylaws. I would note 2 corrections to what was presented today. Roman numeral 4A, last sentence for clarification, reading and shall be held in the city hall auditorium, not just city auditorium. And for Roman 5F, small 3, Roman 3, the punctuation in the numeric list needs to be cleaned up. There are some semicolons, some periods, and then an and should be removed after the end of number 8. So probably just periods will be placed everywhere where there's a semicolon, and then the and will be removed from number 8. But this is presented for discussion by the board, possible motion approval if they so choose.
Hello?
Good morning. There we
I
are.
was causing all that?
No, the technology was.
Okay. All right, so Attorney Leonard? Attorney Leonard?
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, I'm here. I'm back. I'll
Are you ready
put my
for-
glasses on so that's official.
Can we go through it one more time, please?
Oh, sure. Okay,
Okay.
the quick version is, the board has, with my assistance in meetings with council, drafted updated bylaws. There are 2 corrections to the ones that are presented in the materials today. Roman 4A, the insertion of hall between city and auditorium to make sure it's not just any old auditorium in the city, it's actually City Hall auditorium. And in punctuation corrections in section F, little Roman 3, the numeric 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of big Roman 5, the public comment rules, the punctuation, every semicolon needs to be a period, and the and in number 8 needs to be struck. But those were edits that were identified since publication of this, but this is presented to the board for discussion if they'd like, and perhaps approval today if it be their desire.
So what would the board? Is that coming through okay, Director Kleiner? Am I coming through okay?
Yes, you are.
Okay, all right. I don't see myself on the screen, but that's okay. So what would the board like to do? Do we want to accept them today? Do you want an opportunity to review them one more time? How would you like to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Bergeron?
I would like to, I won't put it in a motion just yet. I'd like to table it until our next meeting, and at that time, take up the proposed rules of procedure or bylaws. We have a pretty full agenda, and I think it's good to let it sit there for until our next meeting, so we all have a little more time to dig into the details, the punctuation, and so on.
Okay. All right, so the motion's to postpone to a definite time, with the time being the next regularly scheduled board meeting in July.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Is there a second to Mr. Bergeron's motion?
Bob is muted.
Mr. Early, are you willing to second that motion?
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying, well, I got to do a roll call. So I'll do the roll call. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, so the motion is adopted. Okay, thank you very much, Attorney Leonard. Is there anything else for us at this time?
Not regarding this, no, but we may want to, is now a good time to talk about if we have a victory?
You might recall, Public Service Company of New Hampshire had appealed to the Board of Tax and Land Appeals the assessment for 2014, 15, and 16. And a lengthy hearing on that was conducted in November and into December of last fall. Public Service, we assess them at over $100 million per year. So the numbers were quite high. It could have resulted in an ordered refund of taxes in excess of $3 million. Happily, I can report that we've received a complete victory in that case. Public Service, as to Nashua, Public Service Company's appeals were completely denied. So we will be refunding no portion.
Congratulations, Attorney Bolton.
Congratulations,
Thank you very much.
Attorney Bolton. Thank you very much. It was very heartening to get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Attorney Bolton? All right. Once again, thank you very much. We'll move on. There are no communications, and the next person I'd like to recognize is Ms. Monahan, relative to improvements to assist persons with disability exemptions. Ms.
Yes,
Monahan?
good morning.
Ms. Monahan?
Hi, yes, good morning. This morning we have 2 exemptions for handicap for you, and we recommend those be approved.
Are there any questions for Ms. Monahan?
I have none.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the improvements to assist persons with disabilities exemption as recommended per the attached list?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
and Mr. Hansberry, yes, the motion is adopted. Is there anything else from Ms. Monahan?
Not at this time. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Next person I would like to recognize is Amanda Mazzarol regarding various credits. Ms. Mazzarol?
Good morning. This morning I have for you 5 veterans that I would like to recommend for approval.
Are there any questions from Ms. Mazzarol?
No.
We're going to go through each one of the 5, I believe there are.
We'll do that collectively.
Okay.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the veterans credits as recommended per the attached list?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? All right, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, the motion is adopted. Ms. Mazzarol?
I also have, 9 veterans with a recommendation for denial for the reasons presented.
Are there any questions for Ms. Mazzarol?
If I may, in all these instances, the applicants didn't provide all the information that was required or requested?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Is there a motion to deny the veterans credits as recommended per the attached list?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Ms. Mazzarol, do you have anything else for us at this time?
This morning I do. I apologize. I'd like to bring forth my 2 blind exemptions that I had in error presented on the non-public list. So I do have those two blinds for account 25798 and 31834. I recommend denial, again, for the same reason that additional information wasn't provided to complete the application.
And usually you have done your due diligence. I mean, you kind of go probably above and beyond what's expected to try to get the necessary paperwork from the individuals, correct?
Correct. We usually do at least 1, if not 2 mailings and multiple phone calls to try to follow up with them in every effort to assist them in getting this information in.
And in these 2 cases, there were no extraordinary circumstances that were brought to your attention?
For the 2 blind?
Yes, yeah.
No, they just haven't responded.
They just haven't responded. Further questions from Ms. Mazzarol?
No.
No.
So is there a motion to deny the blind exemptions as recommended per the attached list?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Ms. Mazzarol, do you have anything else for us at this time?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to recognize Lynn Cameron, who's going to address religious, educational, and charitable exemptions. Ms. Cameron?
Good morning. I have 3 different sections for you regarding closure sections and charitable exemptions. The first one are the applicant and the 12 in their financials and any information they got the board needs.
Lynn, you're coming through kind of garbled, Ms. Cameron.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm not sure. Is this better?
A little bit better.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so we have 3 sections. First one for the applicants for the charitable.
Lynn, when you kind of turn just a little bit, it comes in clearer, it seems.
I scoot over a little bit. Is that better?
It's a little better.
All right. So there are 3 categories. Rules and recommendations. So the first one has K9, K12, and their financials and any documents that the board found for their decision. The second one are the renewals, and the third one are the no recommendations. So Southern New Hampshire Medical Center. I believe that was a 1 year that was provided.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm not getting very much of this at all.
No, I'm not either. Sorry, Lynn.
No, that's okay.
May I speak on
Yeah,
behalf of Lynn?
please.
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Brown, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So can everybody hear me okay?
You're
Yes.
coming
I can hear you
through
fine.
yeah.
Okay, so I don't have the paperwork in front of me, so just keep that in mind. I know
Okay.
that there are several different categories coming before you today.
And let's take them one at a time, if that's
Correct.
okay.
Absolutely. Yep, correct. So the first section of your packet that was submitted from Lynn is any new exemptions that are being applied for. So there may be charitable, religious, or educational. So we did include in your mailing the A9 and or A12 if it was required, and then any additional information that was provided by the applicant for your consideration for that exemption.
Thank you. And Mr. Demers from St. Joseph's Hospital has joined us, is that correct? Mr. Demers, are you with us?
Was there? Oh, he is. Oh, you're still muted, Mr. Hurst.
Mr. Demers?
Looks like he's gonna try to call in.
If it helps, we do see Mr. Demers, and he's not muted.
He's not.
according to our system.
Mr. Demers, if you can hear me, can you say hello just so we know whether or not we're able to pick you up?
I think he's trying to call in.
Trying to call in, okay.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Demers?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dan Hansberry. The other members of the board are Bob Early and Paul Bergeron.
Okay.
And
Hello?
I'd asked to have a representative from St. Joseph's here relative to, and to the other members of the board and the staff. I'm looking at the real estate on which exemption is claimed, and it's dated 3/3/2020. It's part of the attachments for St. Joseph's towards the end of the packet. In fact, it's the, I think it's the very last page of the material that they submitted. So it's there's one packet of St. Joe's and it goes to another one. So it's before you get to the next packet of St. Joseph's materials. And the question I have is, there are 5 office suites at 168 Kinsley Street, suites 101, 102, 103, 104, and 105 that you want to have classified as nonprofit. Could you give us the reasoning for that, Mr. Demers, please?
Correct. Number one, what we do is combine units 101 through 104 to create 105. Now, in years past, our physician practices were part of St. Joe's Hospital Corporate Services, which were for profit. But as of a number of years ago, we took the physician practices and put them under the hospital license. They're departments of St. Joe's Hospital, and they are not for profit. So right now, our practices are not for profit. So we're just looking for clarification on that for you and for consideration on tax exemption, because we're a religious organization, not for profit.
And so there are numerous practices in those medical arts buildings that are for profit, correct?
There are a few, correct. Those are independent practitioners, but all of St. Joe's practices are not-for-profit. And this particular unit 105 is the whole floor on 168, which we own the whole floor.
Okay, so it's all the first floor.
Yes.
Okay, I just And is it like a variety of practices? Is it basically internal and medicine and general practice, or there's all kinds of specialties?
Well, we call it family practice and specialty services. So we do have a gastroenterology, we have an orthopedic. So basically focusing on orthopedics in that particular area. And we have surgical services. But they're all our physicians, St. Joe's employees.
Are there other questions from the board, Mr. Demers?
I don't have any other questions.
No, I'm familiar with the building and the property. I'm comfortable with the information provided.
Okay. Does legal counsel have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions, but I think the board, I should inform you that in dealing with other entities, we are taking the position that doctors' offices are not a charitable use. And there are at least two other entities where we've adopted that position.
Any other questions for attorney?
No.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
does the fact that the doctor is working for the hospital change things? I mean, as opposed to what Attorney Bolton said, those doctors, are they working independently? And is that different from this case?
Attorney Bolton, would you respond?
Yeah, I think it's more, is a charity occurring in that space? And I don't know particularly about the St. Joseph's situation, but in the other situations, it's basically a fee for service. They get reimbursed from insurance, and it would be no different than any other for-profit doctor's office from the point of view of the patient. So it becomes difficult to determine what charity is actually being performed. And as I say, in at least two other cases, that's the position we've taken. In one of those cases, probably both of those cases, the doctors are employees of the larger entity. Now, if the situation was, a reduced fee clinic, come one, come all, and we'll charge you what you can afford, that would have probably more, it would certainly look more like a charitable function was going on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Would a motion be appropriate to table this so that we have an opportunity to meet with counsel and discuss in more detail the way other similar properties are being handled to ensure that we are treating this matter with some consistency in accordance with how we're handling other medical facilities like this?
I think it sounds like an excellent idea. What I might suggest, if the board's in agreement, is that we make a motion to approve the list and then have an amendment to postpone action on rooms 100 through 105 at 168 Kennedy Street until the next regularly scheduled board meeting in July. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Sounds reasonable. I'll second that motion.
Okay, well, let's do the first one. So is there a motion to approve the charitable, educational, and religious exemptions as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay. Is there an amendment to the motion to postpone action until the next regularly scheduled board meeting in July relative to rooms 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, and 168 Kinsley Street?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, Mr. Early, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. So the amendment is adopted. So the main motion would read to approve the list as presented with the exception of rooms 101 through 105 at 168 Kinsley Street. So I will call the roll on that. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. The motion is adopted. Mr. Demers, do you have anything else you want to say at this time?
No, I just want to clarify, there is only one unit, there's only one suite. That whole floor was rebuilt, and so there is only, now known as Suite 105. So we eliminated 101, 102, 103, and 104. So it's one physician suite.
Okay,
We're not looking at 5 units.
okay. All right. Are we okay with that, everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mr. Demers, we really appreciate you coming in this morning, and thank you very much for your time. And we will
My
be back.
pleasure. Any other information you need, please feel free to contact me and I'll get it for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good day. All right, Ms. Cameron.
Yes.
We have another list, correct?
I do.
Did you want me to speak?
Yes, yeah, let's just give me a chance to get to that. Okay, what's the first property on that one? You don't have it in front of you, Ms. Brown, right? What's the
do
first
not.
property, Ms. Cameron, what's the first property we're looking at on the next list? So
It's Iglesia Cristina Vesta.
what is it?
Iglesia, and it has Symphony in New Hampshire on it also.
Did you get that, Ms. Brown, what she said?
Lynn, is it the renewals?
Yes.
Yes.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm sorry. The late filing.
Okay. So the Iglesia Church, and
Okay.
the Symphony.
And the symphony, okay, right.
Symphony. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this next list is applicants who submitted their A9s late. So we are asking the board to accept them as late filings. And I believe that they did send in letters with the reason why they were being filed late.
Any questions for Ms. Brown on that? So it's way deep. It's the Iglesia Christiana Bethesda
Correct.
and then Symphony New Hampshire.
Correct.
And the reasoning that they presented is just that basically the world has been turned upside down since COVID-19. With the Symphony, they couldn't even get into their offices. And then the pastor of the church said that he was just overwhelmed dealing with the other issues.
Correct.
So thoughts on that? Any questions from Ms. Brown? All right, so is there a motion to approve the late filing for the charitable, educational, and religious exemptions as presented per attached list?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Ms. Cameron, or I guess Ms. Brown?
So the next list I believe that you have is the list of renewals. So these are applicants who have received the exemption in the past. So they're required to file their A9 and or A12 annually. So the list is people who are already receiving it and they have to renew for 2020.
Are there any questions for Ms. Brown on that?
Does this list start with area agency properties?
Yes, it does. Yeah,
Okay.
three pages, and it ends with Great American Downtown Incorporated.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay. So, and this is renewals, you said, Ms. Brown, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the charitable, educational, and religious exemptions renewals as presented per the attached list?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. And Ms. Cameron, Ms. Brown, we're back to you folks.
All right, so I believe the last list has no recommendations. I believe the first one on the list is Mary Hitchcock.
And
Correct?
that's correct. That's the first
Okay,
one.
all right. So this list are A9s and or A12s that were filed with our office. So Dartmouth was denied last year. So we are bringing forth their information with no recommendation. Southern New Hampshire Medical Center did have a 1-year agreement, which expires this month. And we're waiting for legal to give us advice on Marguerite's Place.
Are there questions from the board for Ms. Brown?
No.
No.
Does legal want to comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think with regard to Dartmouth Hitchcock and Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, those are two of the institutions I was alluding to previously. So I think either tabling them or denying it this time and allowing negotiations to continue would be appropriate. I've not reviewed the Marguerite's Place issue as yet, but I will do that.
So we should carve Marguerite's Place out of the motion.
I think you could table all of them if you wish, and I will certainly get back to you for your next meeting on Marguerite's Place. The Dartmouth Hitchcock and Southern New Hampshire issue may take some time. There are ongoing negotiations, and we'll see what if anything they produce.
Okay, so you're recommending postpone to a certain time, postpone to the next meeting.
Next meeting on Marguerite's Place, yes.
Okay, just on Marguerite's Place.
Right. The other two, the tabling would be expected to last for a longer time.
Okay. All right. Okay, so is there a motion to table the charitable, educational, and religious exemptions list, which starts with Mary Hitchcock and then lists all of the Southern New Hampshire Medical Center Foundation partners. So we would be tabling that. So that would be the motion. So from Mary Hitchcock at the top down to, let's see, we'll use account numbers, from account number 47843 down to account number 20826. So the motion would be to table action on those charitable, educational, and religious exemption.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Okay. Okay. Is there any discussion?
Should we not just table all of them? And
Well,
then-
it's Bolton's recommendations to table. He thinks that this could be a lengthy process with Mary Hitchcock through Southern New Hampshire.
So at our next meeting, we could take Marguerite's Place off the table and discuss it without dealing with the others, no?
We can, it's just one more step. You'd have to make the motion to take it from the table and have agreement on that, whereas if you postpone it to a definite time, it's automatically
Okay.
incorporated into next month's agenda.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so any further discussion? All those in agreement, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Is there a motion to postpone action on Marguerite's Place until the next regularly scheduled board meeting in July?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Okay, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
and Mr. Hansberry, yes. Okay. All right, Miss Cameron and Ms. Brown, anything else for us?
I believe that there's one more in your packet for Girls Inc. Can you confirm?
It's there. It's not at the end.
It had a memo attached with it.
I think I do remember seeing that. Right here, I've got it. So you go back to about the middle of the packet, and Board of Assessors from Lynn Cameron, 6/25/2020. Girls Incorporated, 27 Bourke Street. Does everybody have that?
I get it.
I got it.
Okay, this is a situation where Nashua Housing Authority used to own the property, and they get an exemption based on them being Nashua Housing Authority. Girls Inc. purchased the property in 2017, but they weren't notified that they needed to apply for the exemption under Girls Inc. as a charitable exemption. So as we were reviewing the A9s and A12s, this was uncovered. So we reached out to them, and they immediately acted to file their A9 and A12 so that they would be getting the exemption under Girls Inc., which would be a charitable exemption. So we are asking the board to accept the late filing for the A9 from Girls Inc. for 2020.
So is there a motion to accept the late filing from Girls Inc. for 2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? All right, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Now, Ms. Brown, do you need a second? So we've accepted the, as far as you're concerned, we've accepted the tax-free status of the property, correct, by doing that?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if you need to make a separate motion, but you may just want to cover.
Yeah, I think I'd feel more comfortable with that.
Us too. Thank you.
So it would be, what is it a charitable, not, what's the category?
A charitable exemption.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the charitable exemption for Girls Inc.?
So moved.
Is there a second?
And I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? All right, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Anything else, Ms. Brown?
No, that is it at this time.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Brown. Thanks, Ms. Cameron. All right, so we are on to Mr. Mandiel. Mr. Mandiel, you with us? Mr. Mandiel? Director Kleiner?
Yes, I do not see Mr. Mandiel.
Is he one of the call-in users and he's muted?
He did call in, right? He's not on the computer screen. He did call in.
That's
Mike,
correct.
It's Amanda. Mike's
Hi.
gonna call back in a minute. For some reason, you can't hear him.
Okay,
He's on,
Thanks.
his-
Thank you.
not working.
thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear. Morning, Mr. Mandel. How are you?
Okay. I'm fine, thank you. Very sorry about that. I do not know what happened.
That's
The
all right.
big moment came.
We just have to learn to roll with the punches.
Yep.
At least we're not getting the feedback that we're getting earlier, so that's a big plus. Why don't,
Yeah, there we go.
if it's agreeable to you, why don't I read off the address as we go through each of those? Is that okay?
That is fine. Thank
Okay.
you.
So the first one that we have is 9 Shetland Road, account 5764. So Mr. Mandel, the floor is yours.
Okay, this is a Cape-style home. The abatement is based on data corrections. The city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $266,200 to $261,500.
Are there questions for Mr. Mandel on 9 Shetland?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do we have to approve it when it's simply a data correction?
Mr. Mandel, I'll let you respond to that.
Yes, we do in this case. That is the reason that the taxpayer filed the abatement.
All right, so is there a motion relative to 9 Shetland Road?
I'm not sure if we should deny the abatement, but then make a note that because of data corrections, the amount is reduced. Does that sound right?
Attorney Bolton, your thoughts on?
I think approving the recommended abatement is the way to go.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right. So is there a motion relative to 9 Shetland?
I'll make a motion to approve the change in abatement to 261,500.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, motion is adopted. So the next one that I have, Mandel, is 12 Dairy Street, correct?
Correct.
All right.
There's a ranch-style house. Yes.
Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
12 Dairy Street. Okay. It is a ranch-style house based on sales analysis. The city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $313,000 to $301,900.
Are there questions for Mr. Mandel? Seeing, is there a motion relative to 12 Dairy Street?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement for 12 Derry Street to 301,900.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Next one that I have, Mr. Mandel, is 94 Concord Street. I'm sorry, 74 Concord Street, 74.
74. Yes, that's correct, sir. It's a 2-unit family conversion. This is a property that would been granted an abatement last year for 2018 taxes. The tax representative did not provide any new compelling evidence to lower the assessment further, and the city recommends that the abatement be denied.
Any questions for Mr. Mandel?
Nope.
No.
Seeing none, is there a motion relative to 74 Concord Street?
I'll make the motion to deny the abatement request for 74 Concord Street.
Is there a second?
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, motion is adopted. The next one is 97 Pine Street, Mr. Mandel.
Correct, sir. This is another abatement based on condition. The taxpayer feels that the property is worth $125,000. She did not provide an appraisal with this or any other documentation. I did make an inspection of the property and made a number of corrections, lowering the assessment from $212,200 to $176,400. Taxpayer does not still does not agree with this number, I should say. She still believes that it should be at 125. However, the city is comfortable with the lowering the assessment to 176,400.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Mandiel? Is there a motion relative to 97 Pine Street?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement for 97 Pine Street to 176,400.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, motion is adopted. Mr. Mandiel, 38 Raymond Street?
Correct. Yes. This is an abatement filed. The taxpayer believes this assessment should be lowered because he is converting a garage to finished first floor area. Actually, an adjustment had been made last year, lowering his assessment because of the change, and it is recommended that the abatement be denied. The taxpayer, incidentally, has been made aware of this, and he understands.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mandiel?
No.
Is there a motion relative to 38 Raymond Street?
Make a motion to deny the abatement request for 38 Raymond Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Next one, 111 Coburn Ave, Unit 210J.
Correct, sir. Yes, this is a detached condominium at Coburn Woods. Based on sales analysis, the city recommends that the abatement be denied.
Are there questions for Mr. Mandiel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go right ahead.
I see a notice about an increase in value to 161.3. Are we going to approve that number or stick with the 135,736? I'm sorry, the previous number.
For 2019, we're sticking with the 142.1, but based on the information gathered from the inspection, this year's assessment is going to rise to 161.3.
All right, then I'll make the motion to deny the abatement request for 111 Coburn Ave. I forget what unit it is. I didn't have it in my notes.
It's, let's see, it's
Unit 210J.
Unit 210J.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Mandiel, do many of these units have basements? I noticed that you said this one has at least a partial basement. Is that, how common is that? Do you know, do you have a sense of how common that is up there?
There are very few actually up there that have basements at all. It's my understanding there's about 20 of them up there that do. For some reason, it wasn't picked up. I checked the property record file on this. It just didn't show up, but it does exist.
Okay. All right. Okay, any further discussion? Thank you. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All right. Call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. The next one is 122 Manchester Street.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is an older, yes, this is an older Cape-style home. Based on both the sales analysis and condition, it appears to have been abandoned for some time. And based on the analysis and inspection, the city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $320,200 to $230,900.
Questions for Mr. Mandiel?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I had a bit of a problem with this one. I think the condition of the house brought the assessment down to 291.5. And the fact that it was sold to be knocked down for condos, does that really impact the value? I mean, it seemed like a house like that on 2+ acres of land would have a higher value than 230,900. I saw
Mr. Mandy,
215.
please.
Based on the analysis of two other properties, I did use this in the sales comparison. That is correct. But based on the other two properties I used on Trombley Street and 218 Manchester Street, the property at the subject property is the median at 260,000 for a market value. And when proportionate assessment is applied, the proportionate assessment is 230,900.
Okay.
Mr. Mandiel, on this property, who'd you deal with? Did you deal with the first person who's listed as the owner taxpayer?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. And she's not in the Nashua area, is that correct?
That's correct. She is in Colorado.
Okay.
I spoke very briefly to the real estate broker who handled this transaction for her, and it's in very poor condition. She confirmed the condition.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions on 122 Manchester Street? All right, is there a motion relative to this property?
I'll make a motion to approve the abatement to 230,900.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Okay, the next one that we have, Mr. Mandiel, is 257 West Hollis Street. And before you begin, Mr. Mandiel, Director Snyder, is Mr. Moran with us this morning?
He told me he was going to be present. I don't know if he
Chair?
is.
Yes.
Yes, so we saw them present earlier this morning.
Is he still with us?
I do not see them now.
Should we reach out to him or should we just continue?
I would be happy to reach out to them.
Do you want to reach out to him? I guess if you can raise him right away, we might as well just wait rather than skipping to the next property and maybe he can connect right away.
If the board doesn't mind, would you mind taking the next property and allowing me a moment to make a phone call?
Okay, all right. Mr. Mandiel, is that all right with you? Okay.
That's fine. I'll hold this aside.
All right. So we're going to go to
I have 13 Manchester Street.
13. 275, 13. Go right ahead.
Okay. This is an antique style home. It is another property that had been given an abatement for the 2018 assessment. It had been lowered at that time from 279.2 to 240,800. Taxpayer did not really provide any kind of information and does not meet the burden of proof for a reduction of his assessment. So the city recommends denial.
Are there questions for Mr. Mandiel? Excuse me.
Nope.
No.
All right. So is there a motion relative to 13 Manchester Street?
I'll make the motion to deny the abatement request for 13 Manchester Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Bergeron? Yes. Henry? Yes. Okay. See that Mrs. Klein is still on the phone, so do you mind if we move on to the 310 Brook Village, Mr. Mandiel? Is that okay with you?
Oh, that's fine. Sure.
Okay. So why don't we do that? So 310 Brook Village Road.
Yes, this is Unit 4. Yeah.
Okay.
It is a garden-style condominium located in the Border Brook Trace condominium. Based on market analysis, the city recommends lowering the assessment from 145,200 to 133,200.
Questions for Mr. Mandiel?
Nope.
No.
All right. So is there a motion relative to 310 Brook Village Road, Unit 4?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement for 310 Brook Village Road number 4 to 133,200.
Is there a second?
I'll s-
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Let me check on Ms. Kleiner. Ms. Kleiner, how are we doing?
Mr. Hansberry, I have confirmed with his office that he was not able to continue.
Okay, all right, so,
I would recommend we take the issue up at hand.
okay, all right, so, Mr. Deal, I guess we're going to move back to 275 West Hollis Street. Is that all right?
Correct. That's fine.
Okay, so go right ahead.
Okay, this is a two-family unit located 275 West Hollis Street. Based on sales analysis, the city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $277,300 to $240.
Any questions for Mr. Mandiel?
Nope.
No.
Okay, is there a motion relative to 275 West Hollis Street?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 275 West Hollis Street to 248,600.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. We are at 5 Wayne Drive, correct?
Correct.
All right, go right ahead, Mr. Mandiel.
This is a raised ranch based on sales analysis. I recommend that the city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $361,200 to $324,700.
Are there questions for Mr. Mandiel?
No.
No.
All right, is there a motion relative to 5 Wayne Drive?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 5 Wayne Drive to 324,700.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Okay, the next one is 210 Brook Village Road, Unit 6. Mr. Mandiel?
Correct. This is also another garden-style condominium at the border Brook Trace condominiums. Sales analysis indicates a market value of $146,000 and a proportionate assessment of $129,600. The city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $139,500 to $129,600.
Questions for Mr. Mandiel?
Nope.
All right, seeing none, is there a motion relative to 210 Brook Village Road, Unit 6?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 210 Brook Village Road, unit number 6 to 129,600.
Is there a second?
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Next one, another Brook Village one. 210 Brook Village Road,
Yes.
Unit 20. Mr. Mandiel?
Correct. It is also a garden-style condominium located at the border Brook Trace condominiums. The city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $147,000 to $130,100.
Any questions for Mr. Mandiel?
Nope.
No.
Is there a motion relative to 210 Brook Village Road, Unit 20?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 210 Brook Village Road, unit number 20 to 130,100.
Is there a second?
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Next one is 95 Parnell Place. Mr. Mandiel?
correct. That is a Cape-style house. And comparable sales. Based on condition, inspection was conducted, and which lowered the assessment from $287,500 to $275,200. Sales analysis did not indicate lowering the assessment any further was warranted. So the city recommends that the assessment be lowered from $287,500 to $275,200.
Questions for Mr. Mandiel?
No,
I just have one. If I
Sure.
may. The owner's opinion of value was 213,000. Did they give a justification for trying to lower it by about $74,000 in value?
Yep. The three comparable sales that the owner supplied were she used much smaller housing and much inferior condition. I didn't feel that they were comparable at all and did not use them in my analysis.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions. Okay. Mr. Mandiel, how's the highway noise on that side of the street?
That's a good question. Where this particular property is located, not too bad. She is further west and on the other side of the road from the highway. And I didn't notice it as badly as I have at other properties on Parnell Place. And other properties, it's quite loud, but this particular one, it was not quite as bad. And I did not make any adjustment for that.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? Okay. Is there a motion relative to 95 Parnell Place?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 95 Parnell Place to $275,200.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Next one that I have is 2 Crestwood Lane.
Correct. It is a colonial. The city recommends lowering the assessment from $905,500 to $661,600. The taxpayer bases it on two things, on 2 items, the sales analysis and also a comparison of all the other properties' rate of increase as a result of the 2018 update. We found that during the update, other properties and all of the other properties on Crestwood Lane increased an average of 10 to 15%. This particular property was increased 21.7%, and not exactly sure why it is such an outlier, but it is.
Questions?
So the city recommends.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just restating the city's recommendation of lowering the assessment to $661,600.
Questions for Mr. Mandiel?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mike, the outlier was the assessed value, not that the house was anything spectacular compared to others in the neighborhood. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I have nothing else.
Okay, and then those are all recent sales, Mr. Mandiel, correct?
That is correct. They are April and March of 2019. We do have one from June of 2018, one of the 6.
So the house based on market value is overassessed by about over $155,000. Is that correct?
It was overassessed by $243,000.
$243,000. Okay. And what, just out of curiosity, what is happening like at the high end of the market? Are they being driven up at all with what's happening on the housing market?
At the moment, you were monitoring it. As of the last update, they went up considerably lower rate than the rest of the market. Condominiums, smaller starter style homes went up considerably 30 to 50%. The larger, they were on the order of 8 to 10%. They just don't appreciate it at the same rate as the smaller places. So during the last update, these smaller places took a much higher rate of increase.
And you have fewer buyers at the higher end of the range, so there's probably less offers coming in. You're probably not getting the
correct
competitive bidding that you're getting in the, say, $300,000 to $350,000 range, which is going on now, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. All right, so is there a motion relative to 2 Crestwood Lane?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 2 Crestwood Lane to $661,600.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry? Yes. Motion is adopted. And then we have another Crestwood Lane property, right? 8 Crestwood Lane, Mr. Mandel?
That is correct. Yes, in this case, the city recommends lowering the assessment from $708,100 to $586,100. I should point out that this property is about 600 square feet smaller than the other property at 2 Crestwood Lane.
All right, questions for Mr. Mandel?
No.
All right. Is there a motion relative to 8 Crestwood Lane?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 8 Crestwood Lane to $586,100.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry? Yes, motion is adopted. The next one is land on Stevens Avenue. Mr. Mandel?
Correct. Yes, this one gave me some trouble because there are no comparable sales of similar type property. This is land code on this is 1320, which is undevelopable land. So what I did was take an average of similar type properties across the city, some on the same street, some off of Concord Street, one borders the Hollistown line, and came up with an average cost per square foot. When added to the land, to the yard item, I came up with an assessment value of $25,000. So the city's recommendation that the assessment be lowered to $25,000.
Questions for Mr. Mandel?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
The other lots that were comparables, were they owned by the abutting, an abutter to that?
Yes,
Sorry, yes?
they were all, yes, every one of them.
And how does that compare to the value per square foot of the main property?
They are lower than the main properties. These have not been combined at all.
I kind of thought that they should be equal. If they abut the main property, it's just expanding the main property now. Shouldn't it have the same cost per square foot? Is there a reason why it should be less?
It is up to the owner to combine the lots. If they have not done so, then we assess them differently because they are considered undevelopable lots.
So Mr. Mandel, none of these could be built on then, is what you're saying, correct?
Correct.
And then we had this last year with a property on Hanover Street, I remember. And you said the reason that they're not combining the lots is because it's a lot more cost effective for them to just have it listed as a separate lot, correct?
In many cases, yes. Adding, because you may add, say, a 25% increase in land does not necessarily mean that the land value is going to go up proportionately 25%. It will go up, but not at the same proportion. I don't have the number in front of me exactly how much it would, but for similar type property, where those that do abut other properties, this is the average per square foot that I came up with.
All right. Any other questions?
No other questions?
Okay, so is there a motion relative to the land on Stevens Avenue?
I'll make a motion to approve the abatement request for the land on Stevens Avenue for $25,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, motion is adopted. Mr. Mandel? The next one is
My last, yes. Yes, the last property is located on 24 Bonnie Street. It is a double-wide manufactured home. Based on sales analysis, the city recommends lowering the assessment from $160,200 to $129,100.
questions for Mr. Mandel?
No questions?
No, none.
Mr. Mandel, not specific to this property, but in general, manufactured housing has gone up considerably in the past few years, correct?
That is correct.
Is there a motion relative to 24 Bonnie Street?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 24 Bonnie Street to
Yes.
$129,100.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call.
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, motion is adopted. Mr. Mandel, do you have anything else for us?
No, that is all.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Dame.
Yes, sir.
Hey, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. My first abatement is 8 Cotton Road in Nashua. It is a former Hewlett-Packard industrial plant that was deemed surplus in 2008 and subsequently sold to Hudson News, a distributor of magazines and books. And the 2019 assessment is $7.5 million in round numbers. The taxpayer was claimed in his abatement application a market value of $4.75 million, $4,750,000. I performed a sales comparison approach based on sales of other industrial buildings and concluded a market value of $6,731,000. The building suffers from considerable deferred maintenance, especially to the roof. The taxpayer provided an estimate by a reputable contractor to fix the worst portion of the roof that's remaining, and that totaled something like $610,000. An equal amount would also be needed to finish the other portions of the roof. The portion of the roof over the office has been repaired already. In discussions with the taxpayer, I was able to negotiate a settlement of $6 million assessed. So I recommend approval at this level.
Questions for Mr. Dame?
Sure. Any questions?
No questions.
No, none.
Just one question, may not be able to answer it. How did Hudson Noose happen to choose Nashua, New Hampshire? I mean, they're in airports and train stations.
They seem to be based in the Shrewsbury, Worcester area, and they also have another plant in the Middle Atlantic state. They have another distribution warehouse down there. I think they initially intended to move their operation from the Worcester area to Nashua, and they never accomplished that. And as you probably know, there's been a drop off in the demand for magazine subscriptions. There are people who do patronize their newsstands and other places where they sell their magazines and books before departing on a trip, for instance. So I believe that they have they simply moved to Nashua with the intention of reestablishing themselves up here and lower their overhead costs, and just never accomplished it. And they've also suffered a fall off in revenue as a result of a declining market in readership.
Thank you. It's interesting at times to discover what's back. Is there a motion relative to 8 Cotton Road?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement for 8 Cotton Road to $5,977,300.
Sir, actually, it was rounded to $6 million. Yeah.
Okay,
$6
I'm
million.
sorry. Make that correction to $6 million even.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? All right, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, motion is adopted. Mr. Dame?
Okay. My next 2019 abatement recommendation is for 111 to 113 Lakh Street in Nashua. It is a mixed-use commercial office and light industrial building that is in fair to poor condition. The property is located on the easterly portion of Lakh Street, very much close to the rear parking lot entrance to BAE Systems. This is a very old building. It sold in November of 2019 from its longtime owner, who operated Accurate Printing. Accurate Printing was one of the larger uses in the property. There are also individual offices consisting mostly of small businesses, manufacturers, representatives who needed an office in the Nashua area. Typically, these offices were not manned, and they consisted of one room. But it sold in November 5th, 2019 for $589,900. The 2019 assessment, however, was $655,200. Oddly enough, the taxpayer viewed the property as being worth even less after they bought it, and they noted a market value estimate in their application of $445,000. I perform my own market analysis based on a sales comparison approach using the best sales that I could find, and it was a difficult assignment. There aren't too many properties that are identical to this one. And I concluded a market value of $617,900. That market value estimate equalized produces an equalized assessment of $548,700, and that's what I am suggesting as a recommendation for approval. Go ahead.
Any questions for Mr. Dame?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
has the property owner approved this number?
Yes, Yes, he does.
Okay,
There is a signed settlement agreement for this pending.
I have no other questions.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
All right, so is there a motion relative to 111-1?
I'll make the motion to approve the abatement request for 111 to 113 Lakh Street to 548,700.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry. Yes, motion is adopted. Mr. Dame?
Yes, thank you. I also, just a second, please.
Yeah, take your time.
I also have a list of 57 2019 abatements, which I'm going to recommend denial for each of these. These properties are repeat filings from 2018. So the situation is that the taxpayer or the taxpayer's representative, in order to preserve their rights, filed on these properties to continue the appeal in 2019 because matters were not yet resolved from the 2018, filing. So together with the legal department, since these are appeals from 2018, we've been in discussions with these taxpayers or their representatives to seek a resolution. We're close on some, hopeful on others, and still endeavoring to address the valuation issues on the remainder of this number. At this time, I think some definitive action would need to be taken in terms of a denial, and I'm recommending a denial to allow matters to follow their natural course from here. So the list is part of the packet that was provided to each board member, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Dame?
No.
No.
So is there a motion to approve the list of recommended denials beginning with account number 15114 and ending with account number 33060, and the total number of denials would be 57.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Mr. Dame, do you have anything else for us?
That is it for me.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Next, we have Mr. Gregory Turgis.
Good morning, board.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Fine, thanks. The floor is yours, Mr. Turgis.
So in front of you, I also have a list of abatements that the city is recommending denial on, and they are the same situation as Doug just mentioned. We are pending 2018s that have not been resolved yet.
Are there questions for Mr. Turgis?
No.
No.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the denial list as presented, beginning with account number 43800 and ending with account number 22020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes, motion is adopted. Mr. Turgis?
That's all I have at this time.
Okay. All right. So there is no,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
were there some other denials based on missing information, a separate list?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, the list the list is combined where, they're all denials. The majority of them are 2018 pending, and there are some that are insufficient evidence. They are not separated. It's one list of denials.
Okay. What does the term deemed denials mean as opposed to regular denials?
Maybe Director Klein. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, if.
I can help with that.
I'm going to let
Okay.
Attorney Bolton field that question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mr. Curtis. I didn't mean to interrupt. Respond to
No
that.
worries.
If July 1st comes and goes, and an application has not been either granted or denied, it is considered to be denied. It is deemed denied for the purpose of the taxpayer being authorized to file an appeal, either with the Board of Tax and Land Appeals or with the Superior Court.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bolton.
All right, there's no unfinished business to come before the board. Are there comments by board members? Seeing none, then I would ask for a motion to go into non-public session. Is there a motion to go into non-public session for 3 reasons? To discuss matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person, unless such person requests an open meeting. This exemption shall extend to include any application for assistance or tax abatement, waiver of a fee, fine, or other levy, if based on inability to pay or poverty of the applicant pursuant to RSA 91-3, 91-A, :3, Roman numeral 2, parenthetical C, second, under 91-A, :3, Roman numeral 2, parenthetical 1, for the consideration of legal advice provided by legal counsel, either in writing or orally, to one or more members of the public body, even where legal counsel is not present. And lastly, under RSA 91-A, :3, Roman numeral 2, parenthetical B, the hiring of any person or public employee.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I will call the roll. Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry? Yes. And Ms. Cameron, if you can let the record show that we are in non-public at 10:48 a.m. and we have to wait to cross the bridge at this point, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I will let you know, Chair. Chair, we are back in public session.
Okay, thank you. All right, so is there a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public session because divulgence of the information likely would, 1, affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of this public body, and 2, render the proposed action ineffective?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, I will call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Motion is adopted. Is there anything else to come before the board today? I want to thank everybody. It's really interesting using cyberspace to conduct these meetings, that's for sure. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hansberry, yes. Let the record show that we are adjourned at 11:32 a.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.